Today I'm bringing you the 2010 mockumentary film Trolljegeren. In the Nordic countries, legends about giant creatures have long been passed down. According to eyewitnesses, they are towering in size, mostly ranging from several meters to more than 10 meters tall, with rough skin that is often gray-green or rock-colored, deformed limbs, and twisted faces. For nearly 100 years, sightings of trolls have been reported one after another. Some people even claim to have captured these giants on camera, but the vast majority are fake, and a small portion is hard to verify. In 2008, this film company received 2 reels of videotape mailed anonymously. For over a year, an investigative team tried to determine whether the footage was genuine, yet the surprising conclusion was that the contents of the tape turned out to be real. Thomas and Johanna are students at Volda University in Norway, and they have tracked down the trail of a bear hunter. As members of an animal protection group, Thomas and the others formed a filming crew with the goal of heading into the remote mountains to expose the actions of the bear hunter to the public. Through interviews with several local rangers, they learned that the bear hunter's name is Hans, a well-known hunter in the area. After some effort, Thomas and his group finally tracked down Hans's car, but after just passing through a tunnel, they lost him. And with no other choice, they could only try to keep searching. Led by locals, they arrived at the RV where Hans lived. Thomas asked what the ultraviolet lamps outside the RV were for, but the locals didn't know either. According to the locals, Hans always goes out late at night and doesn't return until the following morning. So Thomas and his team simply parked their car next to Hans's RV and waited for him to come back. This time they were lucky. Before long, they saw Hans driving back, so everyone hurriedly grabbed the camera and rushed over to surround him. Facing Thomas's questions, it was obvious Hans didn't take them seriously at all, and he told Thomas to leave. Everyone was astonished to see the claw marks on Hans's off-road vehicle. Could these really have been made by a brown bear? At night, Hans drove off again to take action, and this time the group quickly followed by car, afraid of losing him again. But they still lost him. Thomas had verified that Hans didn't have a bear hunting license. He was hunting illegally. Meanwhile, another brown bear had been killed, but the rangers found it strange because there were many tracks on the ground that looked nothing like a brown bear's, nor like a human's. So they went back to Hans's place again, and this time they saw Hans towing out the RV, and the group quietly drove after him. They didn't expect that the place Hans was heading to was very far away. He even used a ferry along the way, and it was near dusk when he finally set up camp. Seeing Hans unhitch the RV and set out again, they didn't dare waste a second and followed closely behind. But to their surprise, the place Hans arrived at turned out to be a military restricted zone. With no time to think, Thomas opened the fence and drove inside. The farther they went, the rougher the road became, and they started to lose their nerve. The group makes their way through a narrow path and soon finds Hans's car, but Hans isn't there, so they continue deeper into the forest. Suddenly, they saw a bizarre scene. In the next second, Hans came running out of the woods in a panic. Thomas, who was at the back, gets bitten on the shoulder by something. Everyone hurried to Hans's car and watched the outside nervously. Hans calmly took out a device and searched around for something, but fortunately, nothing unusual appeared. Hans applied ointment to Thomas's shoulder, and everyone anxiously asked what the troll he had just shouted about really was. Although Hans wouldn't say it outright, it was clear he knew something. When they returned to their own car, it had already been attacked and was nearly torn apart, and on top of that, there was slime left by an unknown creature on the body, which was clearly not the work of a brown bear. Thomas wanted to know what it was, but Hans only wanted these kids to leave because it was dangerous here. So Hans drove them to a hotel in town. However, the next night Hans was stopped again by Thomas and the others, and with no other choice, he had to let them join. When they reached the destination, Hans told them to smear a very foul-smelling substance on their bodies and clothes. Only then could they get close to the troll without being discovered. With no other option, they endured the stench and rubbed it all over themselves. Hans brought out the same tool from the previous night and said it was actually a weapon. He told the group that this thing emits intense ultraviolet light, similar to a UV lamp, and when a troll is hit by ultraviolet light, it turns to stone. Hans led everyone into the forest, and they soon smelled troll urine, so he took out his phone to report the situation and said the troll might have been driven out of its territory. Thomas asked whom he was calling, and Hans falsely claimed it was a veterinarian. So they walked for another half an hour into the forest and reached an open area. Hans told everyone to wait in place while he went ahead to hunt the troll. After he left, the group laughed because they didn't believe such a creature even existed. But in the very next second, they heard strange noises coming from the woods not far away.
Thomas!
Meanwhile, the cameraman Callie got separated from the group. He heard sounds in the distance and switched his camera to night vision, clearly seeing a massive creature with 3 heads. After the troll moved farther away, he finally rejoined the group. Hans motioned for everyone to stay quiet and then pointed into the distance. The group ran out of the forest and hid behind Hans's car, while Hans stood nervously on the roof. And the next second, the troll charged out of the woods. To their amazement, the moment Hans switched on the ultraviolet light on top of the car, the troll instantly turned into stone. Now the group was completely convinced, exclaiming that this journey was truly thrilling. Thomas was curious why something so huge was unknown to the public, but Hans said it was because someone was deliberately covering it up. After all, such things were classified. Hans's real job was actually working for a special department. Then he picked up a hammer and smashed the troll's leg with a single strike. The next day, Hans had already dismembered the troll. Just then, staff responsible for cleanup arrived, and when they saw Thomas and the others filming, they immediately ordered them to turn off the camera. So they found another spot to secretly record, and soon another truck arrived, opening its doors to reveal a dead brown bear inside. It turned out these people used this method to fake the crime scene, even leaving bear tracks nearby as cover. After the others left, Hans said he hated such dirty work and suggested Thomas sell the footage to a TV station. Maybe he could make some money. After a long night of chaos, Hans led everyone down the mountain. On the ride, they learned that trolls weren't just one kind, but divided into 2 large groups, mountain trolls and forest trolls, with over a dozen different classifications. At a restaurant, Hans gave them an even more detailed explanation, saying these trolls could live up to 1,000 years, though their intelligence wasn't very high. After a day of rest, Hans invited them into his RV. Inside, they saw Hans's drawings, all depicting trolls he had seen and killed, each with different forms and appearances. Soon the group set off again, continuing their search for trolls. But this time, several days passed without any sightings. One day, they discovered a brown bear skeleton under a bridge, and Hans knew it was the work of a troll. So at night, he led a few sheep onto the bridge as bait, while the group watched from a distance. Sure enough, before long, noises came from beneath the bridge. The group panicked and rushed onto the bridge while Hans fully armored himself in iron plating, holding a blood extraction device, and slowly walked to the other side. He quickly splashed the animal blood he had prepared in advance onto the bridge, and sure enough, the troll was lured onto it. After the troll left, Thomas and the others carefully approached, quickly lifting Hans to check if he was still alive. Fortunately, the iron armor was strong enough, and he was unharmed. He then headed again in the direction of the troll, making everyone's hearts race with fear. Luckily, it was just the troll exploding. This hunt had been far too dangerous. Hans had nearly lost his life, and Thomas felt grateful to have survived. On the way back, Hans explained that the troll's greatest weakness was their inability to convert sunlight into vitamin D and calcium, which made them calcify instantly when exposed to ultraviolet light. This troll, however, was too old, with veins that were too narrow, which caused it to swell and explode, but they still managed to collect a sample of its blood. The doctor placed the sample under a microscope and said results would be available in a few days. After another night's rest, the group set out again, this time planning to visit a troll colony. After hours of driving, they finally arrived at a destroyed farm, so Hans decided to wait until midnight. At night, Hans carried his equipment and searched around with a flashlight, soon disappearing into the distant woods. The group closely followed Hans into the dense forest. 10 minutes later, they came upon a damaged cave entrance. Looking at the bloodstains on the ground, it proved Hans had guessed right. The troll had indeed been there. He took out a horn that mimicked the sound of trolls and blew it, but there was no response from afar, which meant the troll hadn't returned yet, so everyone continued deeper inside. From the railway tracks on the ground, it was clear that this should be an abandoned mine shaft. Soon they reached a more open space, where they found more bones and sticky slime left behind by trolls. The stench was so unbearable it made everyone nauseous. With nothing else to discover, the group decided to leave. But just then, heavy footsteps came from outside. Seeing this, they had no choice but to retreat the way they came and crawl into a small hole, hoping to escape once the trolls left. But something unexpected happened. The trolls happened to sit down right where they were hiding, and now no one could get out. That wasn't even the worst part. One of the trolls kept farting. The stench was so strong the group could hardly open their eyes. Even though they tried everything to remain silent, they were still discovered by the trolls. In the end, they lost a teammate, and the camera was smashed, leaving Thomas filled with guilt. They had no choice but to return to town and report everything to the cleanup staff. But the staff pretended nothing had happened. Left with no other options, Thomas and the group wanted to make the truth public. So, Thomas found his good friend Malika to act as the new camera person. This time they reinforced the car and even installed a powerful ultraviolet lamp on the roof. Hans and the group reached a cabin on the mountaintop, where they first rested. As night approached, strange noises echoed again. Just as they expected, the troll appeared on the distant ridge. Hans didn't want Thomas and Johanna to be in danger, so he drove alone to draw the troll away. But this time, the small ultraviolet light didn't seem to affect the troll much. Hans had no choice but to drive Thomas and the others away, with the troll chasing right behind their vehicle. Suddenly, a man appeared blocking the road, forcing Hans to stop and face the troll directly. He quickly climbed onto the car roof and turned on the ultraviolet light again to attack. And luckily, it worked, driving the troll away. But in the next second, Hans actually drove straight toward the troll's feet. Everyone scrambled out of the car, and perhaps because the ultraviolet lamp had already caused serious damage to its skin, the troll was seen in the distance clutching its head and wailing. Hans didn't hesitate. He pulled out a special high-pressure rocket that had never been tested and charged at the troll alone. Fortunately, the rocket worked, and the troll was successfully taken down. But at that moment, a mysterious organization suddenly appeared, forcing Thomas and Johanna to flee with the camera. That's pretty much where the story ends. Trolljegeren is a Nordic fantasy adventure told in mockumentary style, and from its narrative structure, the film is tight, with a natural and smooth progression of events. From the crew's initial pursuit of a bear hunter, to the unexpected discovery of trolls, then to the conflict with government departments and their deeper exploration of trolls, every transition is clever and tightly connected, constantly pulling the audience's curiosity forward. As a fantasy film, the special effects in Trolljegeren are truly impressive. The troll designs match the traditional descriptions from Norse mythology, while also blending modern effects, making them look vivid and realistic. It was not just a simple fantasy adventure. It also carried reflections on hidden truths and the relationship between humans and nature. Through the young people's pursuit of the truth about trolls, the film invited audiences to pay attention to the concealed facts in life. The trolls, as part of nature, and their conflict with humans also made us think about human intervention and its impact on nature during development. Its unique mockumentary style, engaging story, excellent effects, and profound themes make it a fantasy gem worth watching, allowing viewers to enjoy the charm of Norse mythology while also gaining meaningful reflections. All right, that's it for today. See you next time.